So I'd like to talk about the idea of a basic building block or fundamental unit of matter or of energy, just of the universe in general. A while back, scientists thought that the atom was the basic, unsplittable, fundamental building block. They thought you couldn't break it. It was the smallest piece. It was the fundamental, most elementary piece. Then, come to find out, it's actually made up of neutrons, protons, and electrons. Then we thought, okay, well, those are the basic fundamental pieces of the universe. Come to find out, protons and neutrons are actually made up of up and down quarks and gluons. Now we think these are the most elementary particles, the most fundamental particles. They don't think there's any substructures here. That's what they don't think that today. Now, if you actually look into it, sometimes they'll say they don't know. And that's the proper thing to say here, is they don't know yet. They do not know yet what the substructures are, if there are any. Likewise with electrons, electrons were actually thought of as a most fundamental elementary particle until recently they found out actually electrons are made of three particles. A spin-on, which is a spinning particle, an orbiton, which is the orbiting particle, and either a charge-on or a holon, which is, depending on its charge, the charged particle. So electrons can always be thought of, at least theoretically, they can always be thought of as a combination of these three particles, which in certain conditions they split up into these three particles. Normally you'll see them confined into one particle. So now they think the spin-on, the orbiton, and the charge-on, these are elementary particles. Now if you look most on the elementary particle with photons, gluons, quarks, you'll still see an electron, which, you know, the proper thing here is that if you see a more elementary particle, then you put those on that list. But that's even the wrong terminology, because the correct thing to say is we don't know yet what these are made out of, just like the quarks and the gluons. Now here's my sheet here. Take this. This can represent a quark, a photon, a electron, a gluon, etc. There's a couple of the other ones that they consider the basic elementary particle. Now this circle is not necessarily going to represent the shape of these. Scientists are going to say these are point particles, so that you can't really, you know, some of them actually, like the gluon, might look like something like a little wave or something like that. It's not important the shape of it, but there's some measurable something there that you're talking about. So here it is. Now we don't know yet what it's made out of. It's possible it could be made of a bunch of other little particles that we don't know about yet. Could be string-like particles, wave-like particles. Then those particles could be made of other particles. Those other particles could be made of, what's that? That looks something like an atom structure. That could be made of this. This could make up that. That could make up this. Now these, you know, or down here, string particles, each one of these string particles, this could really look like that if you look close enough, a bunch of interwoven, like a thread, a fabric. And each one of those threads could then actually, if you look closer, be an intertwining of different particles. And then if you take one of those intertwined particles, that could be a collection of smaller particles, which then also could look something like an atom. You see, this is all theory, conjecture, philosophy, just like the Big Bang and evolution and any other thing where you're talking about something that you haven't observed. But to say that you know this is the most elementary, absolutely not. You don't know if this is made of anything. All you can say is we don't know if it is, or if it isn't, we haven't found out yet. So to ever talk about that you know it, that's ignorant, because it could be made of something else. And then you get down to these. So even if this is made of that, these are made of those, these are made of those, these could be made of this. What's that? That's an entire galaxy-like structure. So if you can imagine an entire galaxy-like structure with, you know, billions of little solar systems of subatomic particles. Basically, this is like a metaphor, an allegory here. I'm talking about, you know, these little structures could be made up of something so complex as this. And then within that, you have all that complexity that we have in our galaxies. Now you actually see this kind of concept here at the end of one of the Men in Black movies. They close with that scene where it's like the galaxy is a marble inside of another galaxy, inside of the universe, and so that's actually kind of where I came up with this last idea here, is from a Men in Black thing. Shout out to Alex23, because he actually mentioned something like that a few years back. Some of you will know who I'm talking about, some of you won't. But anyways, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to elementary particles, fundamental pieces of anything. The idea that we could know, or that we do know, the proper language to use in regards to this. And let me make one final note. If there's ever anything here, no matter what it is, if this is a quark, or if this is a orbiton, or if this is a photon, if it's something there that we're talking about, we can go ahead and split that in half, no matter what it is. Maybe we don't have the instruments to do it today, but if there's some measurable, amount of something there, then that's an amount, let's make up an imaginary measurement. This is a nano pentakilometer, some bullshit like that. It's like a trillionth smaller than a quark, or whatever it is. Well, half of that, because if there's any actual measurement, you can then mathematically split that. Okay, so then now you have two of those. Well, take that, split those. Now you've got half of the half. Take that, split those. Now you've got half of a half of a half. And you can do that ad infinitum. So no matter what you have, you can break that in half an infinite number of times, as long as there is something there to begin with. You can get smaller and smaller and smaller, and you can never stop that process. So no matter what, even if you had found what is the basic elementary particle here, and if you were God, you could say this is the basic elementary particle. Say, well, what is that? And he would say, well, how can you understand that? Is it infinitely dense? Is there absolutely no air pockets, no vacuums, no nothing? It's just solid, completely solid. What is it? Energy? Is it mass? How thick is it? And then, where did that substance come from? What is that substance? So this whole idea of matter, of energy, of the basic building blocks of everything, really boils down to something that is, well, I just want you to think about that. Infinitely divisible. Matter and energy is necessarily infinitely divisible.